The observer. Ziltan adjusted his sensory apparatus as he continued his observations of the human military facility. 3 cycles into his anthropological study of the newly discovered species, and they still managed to confound him daily. The Galactic Concordat had assigned him to Earth after first contact just 2 solar revolutions ago, tasked with assessing humanity's cultural and military capabilities. His preliminary report was already causing waves of concern among the Concordat's High Council. The humans moved with purpose across the training field below his observation deck. Captain Eliza Chen, his assigned liaison, approached with the easy confidence that seemed characteristic of her species. Observer Ziltan, we're ready to demonstrate the Artemis defense system as requested, she said, her voice carrying none of the reverence most species showed toward a senior Concordat observer. Excellent, Captain. I admit to curiosity about what your commanders described as basic planetary defense measures. Ziltan's translation implant rendered his clicks and whistles into smooth English. Captain Chen smiled. A gesture Ziltan had learned indicated amusement rather than aggression. Just standard stuff. Nothing fancy about Artemis. They proceeded to a command center buried 300 meters beneath the surface. Ziltan noted this was considered shallow by human military standards. Their paranoia about command center vulnerability bordered on the pathological. The commander of the facility, General Okonkwo, greeted them with a curt nod. Observer, today's demonstration will showcase our response to a Class C orbital incursion. In your terminology, that would be approximately 3 to 5 medium-class warships attempting unauthorized entry into Earth's atmosphere. Ziltan's tertiary hearts quickened. Such an incursion would be considered a significant military action by Concordat standards, a planetary assault. The general exchanged glances with Captain Chen. For us, it's more of a police action. Happens sometimes with pirates or small hostile forces. Nothing that warrants full military mobilization. I see, Ziltan said, though he did not. The casual dismissal of what would constitute a major military crisis for most Concordat worlds was disquieting. Simulation beginning, announced a technician. The main display activated, showing Earth from an orbital perspective. 5 red dots appeared, designated as hostile craft attempting entry over the Pacific Ocean. Artemis grid activating, General Okonkwo stated calmly. What happened next caused Ziltan's chromatophores to flush pale blue with shock. Hundreds of points on the planet's surface and in orbit simultaneously activated, creating a web of weapons coverage so dense it seemed impossible anything could penetrate it. Each Artemis node is equipped with multiple interceptors, from kinetic kill vehicles to directed energy weapons, explained Captain Chen. The system identifies and assigns optimal counters to each threat based on approach vector, speed, and defensive capabilities. On the screen, the simulated hostiles were engaged by no fewer than 27 different weapon systems each. The overkill was staggering. Each target faced enough firepower to destroy vessels 5 times their size. Is this standard protocol? Ziltan managed to ask. Yes. Artemis is designed with redundancy in mind, General Okonkwo replied. If one system fails, or if the target employs countermeasures, the others compensate. But the energy expenditure is well within acceptable parameters, finished the general. Would you like to see our response to a Class B incursion next? Ziltan declined politely, his data storage already overwhelmed by the implications of what he'd witnessed. A police action for humans would constitute all-out war for most Concordat species. 2 days later, Ziltan found himself aboard the UNS Resolute, a human light cruiser participating in joint exercises with Concordat vessels. Despite being classified as light, the ship dwarfed the Concordat's heavy destroyers. Captain Chen had been transferred to accompany him, her expertise in xenorelations making her an ideal guide. The Resolute carries a standard complement of aerospace fighters and orbital drop troops, she explained as they toured the vessel. Nothing special about her. She's actually one of our older designs, about 15 years in service now. Zilten's datapad indicated the ship carried enough firepower to glass half a continent, antimatter torpedoes that could crack small moons, and point defense systems that made the Artemis grid look sparse by comparison. Nothing special indeed. The joint exercises proceeded smoothly until an unexpected communication interrupted them. Zilten observed as Captain Chen was called to the bridge, her expression shifting to what humans called game face, a flattening of features that indicated serious focus. Observer, we've received a distress call from a Concordat research outpost in the Ta City system. She informed him after a brief conference with the ship's captain. They report an encounter with an unknown hostile force. The Concordat cruiser Luminous Path requests our assistance. Zilten felt his vestigial spine ridges stiffen. Ta City? That's where our xenobiology team is studying pre-sapient oceanic life forms. Yes, we're the closest combat-capable vessel. We've been authorized to respond. The transition from training exercise to combat readiness was seamless and terrifyingly swift. Within 17 minutes, the Resolute had reconfigured for war footing and entered FTL transit toward Ta City. During the brief journey, Zilten observed humanity's war preparations with growing unease. The casual efficiency with which they armed themselves, the lack of visible anxiety among the crew, all suggested a species far too comfortable with combat. Captain Chen, your crew seems remarkably calm considering we may be facing an unknown hostile force, he noted. She glanced up from the tactical display. We train for this constantly, observer, and the Resolute has faced worse odds before. But we know nothing about this adversary. Her smile then was different, predatory in a way that made his skin membranes contract. That's why we bring everything. Better to have it and not need it. As they approached Ta City, long-range sensors detected the situation. The Concordat research station was under attack by vessels of unknown configuration. The Luminous Path was maintaining a defensive position, but had sustained significant damage. Assessment demanded the Resolute's captain, a stern-faced woman named Vargas. 7 hostile vessels, configuration unknown. Energy signatures suggest weapons technology comparable to early Concordat design, approximately 75 years behind current standards, reported the tactical officer. The Luminous Path has lost shield capability and reports casualties. Captain Vargas nodded once. Standard response package. Deploy fighter screen, prepare boarding teams, and load mass drivers with kinetic penetrators. Let's introduce ourselves. Zilten watched in fascination as the standard response package unfolded. 48 aerospace fighters launched from the Resolute's bays, a force that alone matched the Concordat's entire fighter complement in this sector. Marine dropships prepared for both rescue operations and potential boarding actions. The ship's weapons systems, previously dormant, awakened with a hunger that seemed almost alive. Observer, Captain Chen said quietly beside him. You might want to prepare yourself. What you're about to see may be intense by your standards. Zilten's chromatophores shifted to a mottled pattern of concern and anticipation. I am here to observe humanity in all its aspects, Captain. I will not shy away from reality. She nodded respectfully. Just remember, this is still a measured response. We're holding a lot in reserve. Those words would haunt Zilten for years to come, as he watched humanity's definition of measured unfold before him. Part 2. The Reckoning. The hostile vessels detected the Resolute's arrival and immediately altered their attack pattern. 3 broke off from harassing the research station to intercept the human ship, while the others intensified their assault on the disabled Concordat cruiser. They're trying to finish off the Luminous Path before we can intervene, Captain Chen observed. Smart move, but too late. Captain Vargas stood calmly at the center of the bridge. Launch ARV packages 1 through 5. Target the vessels attacking our ally. Fighter groups Alpha and Bravo to escort the ARVs. Charlie and Delta to screen us from the incoming hostiles. Zilton watched as 5 small objects launched from the Resolute, each no larger than a personal transport. "What are MARV packages?" he asked, consulting his database for human military acronyms. "Maneuverable Autonomous Response Vehicles," Captain Chen explained. "Basically smart munitions with their own point defense and countermeasures." What she failed to mention was their devastating payload. As the MARVs approached their targets, they split into dozens of smaller projectiles, each homing in with precision that defied the enemy's attempts at evasion. The explosions that followed weren't the conventional detonations Zilton expected, but something far worse: quantum field disruptors that tore apart matter at the subatomic level. 2 enemy vessels simply ceased to exist. A third spun away, critically damaged but somehow intact enough to flee. The other 2 attacking the luminous path broke off their assault, clearly recognizing the sudden shift in combat dynamics. "Target lock on the 3 approaching hostiles," reported the weapons officer. "Mass drivers only," ordered Captain Vargas. "Let's not waste the good stuff." The mass drivers turned out to be hypervelocity railguns that accelerated projectiles to a significant fraction of light speed. They struck with such force that one enemy ship was bisected cleanly, its drive core rupturing in a spectacular secondary explosion. The other 2 managed evasive maneuvers that would have impressed even veteran Concordat helmsmen. Zilton's data recorders struggled to keep pace with the battle's intensity. Human fighters swarmed around the remaining hostiles with a coordination that suggested either advanced AI assistance or pilot neural links, both technologies the Concordat considered ethically questionable for various reasons. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the lead hostile vessel," announced the communications officer. "Audio only, unknown language." "Run it through the xenolinguistic matrix," ordered Vargas. "Let's see if we can talk this out." Zilton was surprised by this development. After witnessing such overwhelming firepower, the attempt at communication seemed incongruous. The ship's AI processed the transmission, and a guttural, harshly synthetic voice emerged from the speakers. "Retreat now, mammals. This sector belongs to the Draven hierarchy. The water worlds are ours to harvest." Captain Vargas raised an eyebrow. "Open a channel. I want to speak to them directly." When the connection was established, she spoke with remarkable composure. "This is Captain Elena Vargas of the United Nations ship Resolute. You are attacking allies of humanity and a protected xenobiological preserve. Cease hostilities immediately and withdraw." The response came quickly. "We do not recognize your authority, human. We have studied your kind. You are soft, reliant on technology you barely understand. The hierarchy has conquered 12 species more formidable than yours." Something changed in Captain Vargas' expression, a subtle hardening that made Zilton instinctively back away. "I see diplomacy isn't your strong suit," she said. "XO, prepare the Cerberus protocol. Transmit surrender coordinates to all hostile vessels." The executive officer hesitated for just a moment. "Captain, Cerberus is significant escalation. They've made their position clear. XO. Execute." Zilton watched in growing apprehension as new systems came online, systems that hadn't been part of any briefing he'd received. Captain Chen moved closer to him. "Observer, what you're about to witness is classified Level 5. Your Concordat clearance was only for Level 3 technologies. This will be included in an updated briefing to your superiors." "What is Cerberus protocol?" Zilton asked, his voice barely audible. Before she could answer, space itself seemed to ripple around the Resolute. 3 points of impossible darkness materialized equidistant from the ship, forming a perfect triangle. "Fold point stable," reported a technician from a station Zilton hadn't previously identified as important. Cerberus units responding. From each point of darkness emerged a vessel. No, not vessels, Zilton realized with shock. They were weapons platforms, utterly dedicated to war, with no life support or crew quarters visible in his scans. Each was bristling with technology that made the Resolute's armaments look primitive by comparison. Cerberus units are our automated response to existential threats, Captain Chen explained quietly. They exist in a parallel dimension until called. What you're seeing is actually a very small deployment, just 3 Sentinel-class units. The enemy vessels attempted to flee, but space itself seemed to work against them. The Cerberus platforms didn't fire conventional weapons. They simply unmade their targets. Reality folded around the hostile ships, and when it unfolded again, they were gone. Complete silence fell over the bridge. Even the human crew seemed somewhat awed by the display of power they had unleashed. Captain Vargas broke the silence. Secure from Cerberus protocol. Deploy medical teams to the luminous path and the research station. I want damage and casualty reports within the hour. As if they hadn't just demonstrated technology that violated several fundamental laws of physics as understood by the Concordat, the crew efficiently shifted to rescue operations. Zilton found his voice at last. Captain Chen. That was. I have no reference point for what I just witnessed. She nodded solemnly. Few do. The Cerberus platforms represent technology we developed after our first interstellar war, 200 years before we encountered the Concordat. We've improved them significantly since then. Your first interstellar war. But your historical records provided to the Concordat indicate you achieved FTL capability only 80 years ago. Captain Chen's expression was unreadable. There are aspects of human history we keep private until we establish sufficient trust with new allies. The war I referenced was not with an alien species. The implications of that statement left Zilton speechless. Humans had developed such technology to use against themselves. In the days that followed, Zilton observed the humans conducting rescue operations with the same efficiency they had shown in combat. They treated the injured Concordat personnel with compassion and respect, rebuilt critical infrastructure on the research station with remarkable speed, and established new defensive measures to prevent future attacks. A week after the incident, Zilton sat with Captain Chen in the observation lounge of the Resolute, watching the repaired luminous path prepare for departure. You're troubled, observer, she noted. Your colors have been shifting between concern and fear for days now. Zilton couldn't deny it. I came to study humanity as a newly spacefaring species. What I've witnessed suggests you've been hiding your true capabilities from the Concordat. She sipped her coffee before responding. Not hiding. Revealing gradually. There's a difference. But why? The Cerberus technology alone would grant humanity a dominant position in Concordat politics. And that's precisely why we don't reveal everything at once, she said. Humanity has a complicated history with power imbalances. We've learned that relationships built on fear don't last. We'd rather be accepted as equals first, then reveal our capabilities as trust builds. Zilton considered this. Yet you didn't hesitate to use this power against the Draven. They gave us no choice. They were killing innocents and rejected diplomatic options. Her expression softened slightly. Look, Zilton, humanity has a saying. Speak softly and carry a big stick. We prefer the speaking softly part, but we're always prepared for when that fails. What I observed wasn't a stick, Captain. It was something beyond my comprehension. That's fair. She smiled faintly. If it helps, what you saw was nowhere near our full capabilities. The Cerberus units deployed were Sentinel class, basically our equivalent of a police response. Zilton's chromatophores paled to almost white. That was a police response. What would constitute a military one? Captain Chen looked out at the stars, her expression growing distant. Let's hope you never have to find out. The last time humanity deployed a full military response, we had to evacuate 3 star systems and establish a 1,000-year quarantine zone. We collapsed a pulsar to stop what we found there. She turned back to him, her eyes reflecting starlight. My point is, observer, humanity doesn't believe in measuring force equally against threats. We believe in overwhelming force, applied precisely, to end conflicts quickly and decisively. What you call overkill, we call mercy, because a prolonged war is far more devastating than a swift, decisive end. As Xilton prepared his report for the Concordat High Council, he struggled with how to frame what he had learned. How does one explain to a galactic civilization that they had unwittingly allied themselves with a species whose police action could unmake reality? How does one convey the paradox of a people so capable of compassion, yet so terrifyingly prepared for violence? In the end, his report contained a single recommendation. The human concept of overkill represents not merely a tactical choice but a philosophical position. They view excessive force as compassionate when it shortens conflict and preserves life in the long term. I advise the Concordat to reconsider humans not as emerging allies to guide, but as ancient guardians to understand. Their protection may be invaluable, but their definition of necessary force requires careful consideration in all future joint operations. As the Resolute prepared to return to Earth, Captain Chen approached Xilton one final time. "Your report is being transmitted now. May I ask what you told your superiors?" Xilton's chromatophores shifted to a calm blue. "The truth, Captain. That humanity defies easy categorization. That your species views overwhelming force not as excessive, but as merciful. And that the galaxy may be safer with humans in it, provided we all agree on what constitutes a threat." She nodded, satisfied. "That's fair. And Xilton, thank you for keeping an open mind. Many wouldn't have." As his transport pulled away from the Resolute, Xilton watched the massive ship until it vanished into FTL. He found himself hoping fervently that humanity's definition of threats aligned with the Concordats, because if it ever didn't, if humans ever decided the Concordat itself represented a danger, there would be no defense against what they considered a measured response. The true definition of overkill, he realized, wasn't about the scale of force applied. It was about the gap between expectation and reality. And humanity existed in a reality the rest of the galaxy was only beginning to comprehend.